Uh, Very good morning to all of you, dear students and my dear viewers. You all are welcome to the Class 7 Science lesson, and I have already taken 1 and 2 classes in this very aspect where I talked about the acid, base and salt concept. But in this very lesson, you are supposed to study about the other chemical processes that is being carried out in this very acid, base and salt. Here is a one process named neutralization, and you have to study in this very aspect about the neutralization. So you stay with me and try to learn this very concept. What do you mean by the neutralization? The literal meaning the literal meaning of the neutralization is to make it neutral, inactive, and where you can't do anything with this very matter. I'm telling you one thing, that in the chemical terms its meaning is the reaction between an acid and a base is called neutralization. In neutralization reaction salt and water are formed. In the very general concept, it is often said when teaching this very chemistry to the students, that what happens when acid and base reacts with each other. When acid and base reacts with each other, it forms salt and water. Then what does it occurs? What does happens? So if salt is made, then is the acidic nature of the salt remains, is the basic nature of the salt remains, or if we bring that salt to the pH scale, then what it will show? Students, I am telling you one thing, that if salt is made, then on pH scale the properties shown by the salt will be the neutral. Okay, because in this very reaction, when acid and base was reacting with each other, what happens? The acid loses their acidity and bases loses their basicity, and acid base both reacts and form a new compound, that is the salt. The best example in this very aspect is when HCl acid, okay, reacts with the NOH base, NOH a base alkali, and HCl is acid. So when acid and base react, what does it form? It form NaCl, sodium chloride and water. So we can easily understand this very concept by considering this very thing, that when salt and water reacts, when acid and base reacts, it forms salt and water, and this is the neutralization reaction. Suppose you are a student of class 7, so what you will do when such things comes, and when you are supposed to ask to perform this very experiment in the laboratory, then what you will do? So I'm just sharing one thing that you are supposed to do in the laboratory when you come to the school in the regular parlance, in the regular way. Just listen this very thing very carefully. You have to do this thing on at a very small scale. That first hydrochloric acid is supposed to be taken in the test tube, where 2 to 3 drops of phenolphthalein is to added. What do you mean? What is the effect of phenolphthalein in this very compound? You know, phenolphthalein is a reagent which determines the acidity and basicity by changing its color in the solution. So this thing you have to keep in this very mind. It is a sort of liquid litmus paper. Generally litmus paper is made up of the algae, lichen, you know, and where you are supposed to put few drops of acid or a base on a litmus paper, and accordingly it color changes. How does it changes? You know pretty well. My formula ABC means if you have taken acid, then it will turn blue litmus into red. If you have taken bases, it will turn red litmus into blue. So this is the formula, but here you are supposed to take the liquid phenolphthalein. Okay, and phenolphthalein is a liquid which changes their color as per acidity and basicity. So what does it happens when you put 2 to 3 drops of phenolphthalein in a hydrochloric acid that has been taken in a test tube? What does occur? Its color doesn't change. It becomes a kind of colorless when this very phenolphthalein is placed into the HCl acid. And then how does you come to know, how will you come to know about this very fact that the reaction process is being carried out, and sometime hydrochloric acid, sometime it is base, or sometime it is acid, or it becomes neutralized. How you will come to know that? It all depends upon the color changed by the phenolphthalein. First you put some few drops of phenolphthalein into HCl acid, and it is completely diluted and become colorless. So when we react that acid with the base at a time, what happens? Simultaneously or gradually as we increases to add base into the acid, what happens? Simultaneously it loses its acidity and becomes gradually neutral property, and it is heading towards the neutral properties. And at the time when the complete neutrality has been attained, at the time when the acid and base after reacting becomes completely neutral, then automatically the color of the phenolphthalein changes, and the changed color indicates that now solution is no longer acidic, or solution is no longer acid. So I am just telling you, you have to listen it very carefully, कि the solution will be colorless. Add some sodium hydroxide, that is the NaOH solution, and adding the sodium hydroxide solution drop by drop, the solution becomes pink in color. When an acidic solution is mixed with a suitable amount of basic solution, it becomes neutral. The changes in the color indicates that the solution no longer remains acidic, it becomes changed. So the colorless solution of the phenolphthalein in the acid becomes pink after adding the base. And what does base causes in that solution? Base reacts with the acid and made the salt. So student, this is a very important aspect, and I hope that you will understand it and listen it and listen this very video times and again, and try to understand its main concept. Just see this in this very slide, what you have been seeing here. You see that the salt are a substance formed by the reaction between acid and base. Acid reacts with base, forms salt and water. Hydrochloric acid reacts with sodium hydroxide to form sodium chloride and water, and sodium chloride is the same salt which we eat as a table salt. So student, you have to keep this very thing in your mind, and it is very important, and in most of the exam this things been asked. Now come on this very point, that where does we feel the neutralization in our everyday life. First of all, I will tell you that you must have feel in every house, that is the indigestion. What do you mean by the indigestion? You must have heard from your elders or from your fathers, grandfathers, that today I have taken a lots of food, today I have eaten oily food, so the food is not being properly digested, I am feeling acidic. Sometimes they just feel of kind of pain in their stomach. Sometimes the systolic process becomes reverse, and sometimes they expel out the air from their mouth. When we speak in Hindi, that we are thakar aa raha hai, we are producing certain sound by expelling out the air from our mouths. So we often say that now the acidity has risen in the stomach, and if acid is risen one, then what we does, we take certain medicine. You must have felt that your grandfather may have taken certain medicine in order to neutralize that very acidity. So in that very process, what does we take? We take the milk of magnesia, which is basically a magnesium hydroxide. Its color is white. After taking it, you will see that the acidic environment inside the stomach has been completely neutralized, and what happens, the system becomes neutral and a person gets relief from the acidity. There are so many different type of anti-acid is available in the market. So this is the one significant application of the neutralization in our everyday life. Second is the ant sting. You have been knowing that the red ant, while when it bites, it makes a very painful feeling and a sensation at the skin. And what does we do? It is the and what is the chemical in the ant bite? It is the formic acid. And if it is acid, then how does it neutralize? You have to react it with the base. And you know, in our house, baking soda, calamine, these materials are available, and it has basic in the it is basic in the nature. So when we rub it, what we do, we given the environment to the formic acid to make them salt. Okay. And now is coming the soil treatment. You know that a farmer grows the food grains, but you must have heard that by using the lots of fertilizer, the fertility of the soil is also getting eroded. It's not always same that when you use a lot of fertilizer, it always yield a high production crops. No, it's not always the same. Sometimes what happens, due to the heavy amount of using the fertilizers, we are increasing the acidity of the compound, acidity of the soil also. So in that very cases, what happens, we have to either leave that very field for a long time for getting to reduce its acidity, or we have to add something basic by the nature to the field so that its acidity becomes acidity changes into the neutrality. Okay. So in this very process, what we use calcium hydroxide. It's a kind of flagged lime. Calcium oxide is activated. Lime, when it reacts with the water, it forms calcium hydroxide. So when we react with the calcium hydroxide, which is a basic by the nature, the acidity of the soil gets neutralizes. Okay. So if the soil is acidic, it can be neutralized by adding organic matters, which is releases acid. Okay. अगर basic है तो we are using organic matter which is added acid, and if it is acidic, then we have to use a quicklime or calcium hydroxide in order to neutralize it. यहाँ भी in the same way we are carrying the acid and base reaction. Factory wastage. अब factory wastage, you know that while the after industrialization, a lots of wastes are secreted by, or lots of waste are discarded by the factories, which causes the great hazard to the environment. In this very hazardness, one of the factory waste is having the significant importance. What happens over here? Factory waste which are sent into the water bodies contain acids which can kill fishes and other organisms. It can be neutralized by the adding basic substances. Obviously, when we discharges the factory waste material, it contains certain acidic thing also, and due to the heavy acidity, what happens, the living organism inside the water gets died simultaneously, gradually. So in order to save them, in order to save our environment, sometimes we use certain basic things to the water in order to neutralize that acidity, so that the aquatic life could sustain nicely. So student, I think that you must have heard this very lesson very carefully. If you didn't, then please repeat this very video once again. Listen it very carefully. I have tried to explain each and every point in a very lucid manner, but even if you don't understand it, then you are free to ask me in the comment box, and I pay thanks to one and all all students for their patientful hearing. Okay, thank you very much.